So welcome to the latest module feedback session. Glad to see some people along. It's nice, and we'll use this as an opportunity to share what we've been doing and to see if you have anything to say about any feedback at all. Overall, we'll talk about a little bit about the roadmap for the future, what we're planning in the near future. I'll talk a little bit about this module files proposal, which has recently been landed as a proposal, and a couple of other new features that have been added to module related features. So with regard to the roadmap, actually this is quite similar to the slide we had last time for this, because the module files thing came into in the way, and so that's what we've done since. So we still have not got integration tests for known OCI registries, but we are interested to find out about any interesting unusual registry implementations that people are using, and particularly if there are any problems people encounter with their registries pushing Q modules to them or pulling Q modules from them. The central registry is now a thing. You can get an invite code if you haven't got one by going to the Slack channel or emailing. Our sort of next big thing is working out how we want to have available in the central registry schemas for well-known services, for example Kubernetes or GitHub Actions workflow or other things, and we want to so in some cases there are sources of truth like Go for that, in other cases there might not, but we want to make that very much a thing and make those available to people that need them. Issue 2865 apparently.
Yeah, that's the one. If anybody's interested in sort of how we've tracked that in the modules roadmap, that is the canonical issue. It covers an awful lot in that its headline is what is v2, for want of a better phrase, of q.mod, pkg, gen, user, etc. And so, as Rog suggested, it's actually quite wide ranging, but it comes at it with the sort of the OCI registry type mindset to it of how can we make these things available specifically through something like the central registry, whereas Rog said they're well known, so we should make them available at a well-known location, and the central registry is a good place to actually start from that perspective. So we are still working on that, but as Rog said, we got rather sidetracked by what is it's a security issue, probably not as in it's a security problem, but could become a security issue. So
yeah, potential security issue. I'll talk about that in a moment. Another major thing we're working on is generating automatic documentation from Q schemas, and particularly Q schemas, I think, but Q in general. Which something like Go does this for published modules in the pkg.go.dev, and Go has it a little easier, I'd say, because it has a very well defined notion of what types and entities are top level of module, but we still think we can do something good for Q, and so we're working on that, and that'll be super useful, I think, particularly in combination with the central registry. We are going to publish a roadmap at some point in the near future too, to make all these things explicit. Paul, you have a hand.
Yeah, I was just going to say that comment about the roadmap is specifically targeted at the central registry, and just as opposed to the modules roadmap, which is listed at the top, just indicating that we actually will sort of run the central registry roadmap or plan effectively independent from the modules one, because they're effectively two quite different things. And so the idea with the generating docs from published modules is to actually start very basic and scrappy on that, to get a proof of concept out and just start kicking the tires on it. So yeah, really, as soon as we have something available, again, we got somewhat sidetracked on work on that over the last couple of weeks because of some error handling issues that Rog mentioned in the community update call the other day. but Rustam is back working on the documentation generation side of things. So again, as soon as we can have something available in the central registry, we'll just start pinging folks and saying, hey, can you help to sort of give us some ideas around this? Joshua.
Is there a place where this work for documentation generation is happening like across Q, or is this like the first attempt with modules?
It's really the first attempt as far as modules is concerned. Everything that we are doing with this documentation generation piece is entirely doable via the Go API. So if I can draw an analogy, is Timony has a documentation piece that they're working on. Stefan and I forget who it is. I think it might be Luke. Luke in particular is working on documentation generation of things in the Timony world. Others have worked on generating docs from Q code in the past in different forms. Everybody's done this via the Go API. What we're doing to make these docs available via the central registry is no different in that respect. It's just using the Go API. But as Rog said, the complexity in this really comes in terms of the size, shape, etc. of the schemas. They're likely to be considerably more complicated than a Go type, for example. So there's plenty to explore in this space, especially as far as the UI, UX on the front end, on how someone might explore a very large structure, for example.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm watching the Timony development, and I just wanted to make sure there wasn't a way for us to plug in with what you guys are doing, and we don't duplicate work across the streams, I guess.
Yeah, indeed. So I think that's there's a lot. So we are just using the Go APIs. I think there is probably a lot to learn across the board and share in terms of what visualization of this kind of stuff works, and zooming in and out of configurations. And I actually suspect there's a lot of prior art elsewhere in Data Explorer, UIs, UXs, where we can benefit from understanding how folks have done this elsewhere. So what we're doing, focusing on in the first instance, is not coming up with something big, glamorous. It's going to be very raw, it's going to be very rough, and it's going to be the basic pipeline of, you've published a module to the central registry, it's public, click on this page to view some very rough documentation of what that looks like. And then we can iterate really quickly from there based on feedback, priorities effectively in terms of what it is. If people have lots of stuff that is very similar to Go types, i.e. the basic Q, great, then we can optimize for that. Or if, for example, and GitHub Actions is like my favorite and least favorite canonical example in this situation. You've got like a big blob of schema. How on earth do you start to navigate that and explore it in a way that you can then use it as well? So yeah, plenty of, we're really happy to share all of this stuff in terms of updates and what progress we're making on this stuff, especially with the Timony folks, because I know they're making progress on that too.
Thank you.
Cool.
All right, so we'll talk about a little bit about this piece, which was actually we alluded to in the last call, and it's as Paul said, it's actually a potential security issue. So there was an original issue which I haven't actually linked here, where I think was it Richard? Anyway, like there's a problem where someone was seeing a file being uploaded as part of a module which they weren't expecting to be, because it was Git ignored, and that made us realize that actually this is actually a very common occurrence, and that potentially people have files around with security keys in, and if you do qmod upload or publish rather, you should there is there's potential, you really don't want those published. So we should probably look at Git ignore, but then there's the question, well, why Git? Why not anything else? And we had a lot of internal discussions about this, culminating in the discussion in 3017, which if anyone has any feedback, that would be great. That's an open discussion. And that also points to an actual proposal document. And the upshot was that the modules should explicitly declare their source, and that's a way of potentially in the future, I mean, hopefully in the future, not right now, but to link when you've got a module uploaded to a registry and it purports to come from a particular Git commit, for example, and then you've got the contents of the module. What is there that relates those two? How have you got from that Git commit and everything in it into that to the contents of the module? This source field is essentially, the way I see it, is that's what enables you to do that automated checking. You're like, the source says it's from Git, we have some Git metadata, here's the contents, we can do that verification and know that no one has imposed something malicious along the way. And also it means that you have confidence that other people, so the way it works, if you don't have this source explicitly specified, then the upload will fail. And that means that if you have a module that explicitly expects to be Git related, have Git metadata, and somebody tries to publish a version and they don't have Git around, well, then it will fail because it doesn't have that Git metadata. That, of course, doesn't help when the Git metadata itself, when the version isn't actually published, but at least it means that if you have that commit available, you'll be able to do the check that the module source is actually compatible, or is actually what that implies. But there's an opt-out. If you specify source kind self, that essentially means that module is self-describing, has no source as such, in that what's in the module is what you get. And if you specify source self and you do git publish, you do q publish, then it will just take it from the file system, and it won't look at Git at all. That's arguably, well, we'll see how that works out. Perhaps we should always support git ignore, but there's lots of nuances. There are also potentials for doing things automatically. But this is our first stab at doing that. And I've got some CLs which implement support for all this on tip. Hasn't quite landed. There's one last thing still to be reviewed. That's a good question. We don't. Yes, that's definitely a plan. And that's not. We haven't done that yet. And in combination with qmod where. To say where a particular module, what registry a particular module will be fetched from. I think those give you quite nice insight into are we really publishing to the right place? Are we publishing the right things to the right place? So that's so yeah. If you have any feedback on that, please do let us know and create some feedback. So mostly as a result of these new we've created a few new feature or new aspects of modules. One is that when we added the source field, we realized that the previous version actually disallowed the source field, didn't allow the source field, because we want to catch spelling mistakes in the module.q file. So when you have something with the source field, oh, we're going to try and upload to the central registry, and that's going to reject it. So that's not great. But also, we want to, if someone has created, an early, we don't want to allow all possible fields in there. So what the decision we made is, we've already got this language.version field inside module.q, and we'll actually predicate the schema for the module.q file on that language version. So if you've got no language version, well, it's assumed to be the old version. Well, actually, if you're in the modules context, we actually require that you have a language version. And when as of version 090 alpha 1 or something like that, which is just about to be published, actually probably 0 alpha 2, then it will allow the source field, and so we can carry on adding different schemas according to the language version, and change semantics as well according to that. And that seems like a decent path forward to the future for making future enhancements in the modules ecosystem. And the other offshoot of that is that if you try and create a module.q version with a version that's greater than the current version that's actually executing, then you'll get an error, because technically you can't know if you can't execute Q that's from the future, because it might be using different version semantics or different syntax. So in that case, if you try and consume a module from the central registry that is later than your current version, then you'll have to essentially download a new version of Q or update your library. Another feature that we've added is the ability to bypass the central registry fallback. You can specify Q registry, you can specify a particular registry for particular module prefixes, as we're doing here with myOrbRegistry.com equals myregistry.com. But up till now, when if you don't specify a fallback registry, so you didn't have that comma there, then it would always fall back to the central registry, which of course some people don't want to do that. So now we can specify none as a registry name, and you can just that if it falls back, it'll just say no registry cannot resolve that module to a registry. And you can use that anywhere. You can use the registry name, so you can say, oh, if you try to fetch a module within this namespace, well, that's also equally going to fail. So that's is the case. Yep, that's the registry config.q file. Yes, that's they both use a common implementation, so that's available with registry config, the registry configuration too, the file-based configuration as well as the environment variable-based configuration. Another feature that's been added, and this again was prompted by the source thing, because we want people to be able to explicitly add their source explicitly, but we don't want to say, oh, actually edit your thing, add this field manually. That feels a bit clunky. So you can actually edit your file automatically with qmod edit. One of the things you can change is source, but you can also add requirements, you can remove requirements, you can change the module name, and then basically the idea is that you can edit almost everything you might care about in the module.q file. One thing you won't be able to do is add or remove comments, but as comments are just discarded currently, then that's probably not that we will move towards a situation where you will be able to have comments that are preserved in module.q, but we're not there yet. And yeah, if you've used go mod edit, that's the sort of model for this command. That's just about all we have to report for now. If anyone has any questions beyond the useful questions that have already been asked, then please fire away.
That qmod edit didn't make it to the Alpha 2, right?
No, in fact, very little of what the new features I just talked about have actually landed in that. It was a bit of a rush this morning. It's like, are we going to rush and get this landed? No, I think we'll just push it, because the Alpha.2 was all about the evaluator, and so I think early next week these features will land, and we'll get the central registry updated too.
All right, thanks so much.
I'm slightly I'm slightly sweating at the prospect that we'll be doing a release a week for the next few weeks again, because there's a number of changes that are likely in the evaluator side of things, the encoding side of things from Daniel's perspective, and the module side of things from Roger's perspective, and with the time blocked out from the LSP perspective as well. So I think we had this back in, I think it was February time, in the run up to KubeCon, where we were just doing an alpha a week because there was this many things to try and surface. I think we'll probably do the same. But again, this isn't sort of chaotic releasing of stuff. It's very much like the the encoding stuff is guarded by an experiment, as is the module stuff, as is the evaluator stuff. So a lot of this stuff can safely land together. So we're just trying to get it in people's hands as quickly as possible. Whoever's first, Daniel.
Something I want to mention, just in case it's not clear, when master should always be in a quote unquote testable state. So if stuff like gomod qmod edit lands in master, you can always try it with something like this. You don't have to wait for alpha releases. Now, us doing a release is always easier, but you can always try master.
Richard.
Is it possible to run multiple experiments at a time?
Comma separated.
Great, thanks.
And Daniel recently added the ability to disable experiments, because some the one experiment that's recently been added is the YAML experiment, YAML v3, and that is actually enabled by default. So you need to turn it off with YAML v3 equals false or 0. So, and in the future we will maybe.
That's a joke. That doesn't work. But yeah, for
Yeah.
now you can just comma separate the things you want to enable.
Yeah.
What we will be doing with the new evaluator stuff, the module stuff, the encoder stuff, is just aggressively pushing docs to qlang.org as well, to demonstrate, just as we've done with the module stuff, to demonstrate how it works, i.e. how to enable it, and then just quick short examples to sort of proof points as well in the docs. So we will continue to do that because that's actually working really well.
Any other questions?
Super. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you very much, and see you this time in 2 weeks approximately. Have we got a good date scheduled for the next one?
Yeah, it's in the calendar already. It is the 2nd of May.
Great.
Although, Roger, I'm just looking at a potential calendar conflict there, so we might need to reschedule that. But we'll advertise via a GitHub discussion as usual to confirm the date.
That does sound like I might be away for that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll be thinking about it. Well, I'll see you. Hopefully, see you all at the next one.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for coming.